taking us somewhere else?
Yeah, we'll just show some reruns. I'm hoping that this show will be real good. I'll use it as one of them, you know.
Cool.
And then go on.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Lou Meyer. This week we're fortunate to have Rick Gunn on the show. Rick, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, my pleasure. So, in case folks missed it, a few weeks ago, Rick was here to speak about his trip around the world, 25,811 miles, 33 countries in 944 days. It sounds like some sort of record.
No, not even close. I think a Kiwi just set the record, and I don't really know why you'd want to set the record going around the world on a bicycle. I want to stop and see things, and most bicycle tourists want to take it slow and take it all in. So actually the 944, it was 3 years roughly, and I wanted to take my time and do it right. So
It sounds like you certainly did.
yeah.
You know, the usual question would be, what motivated you to do something monumental like this?
As I tell in my show, there are a lot of different layers of why I did this. A lot of them have to do with my upbringing. You know, my mother passed away when I was young, and before she died, my parents were in the middle of a divorce. It was a fairly painful situation, but she flew to try and see the world and travel before she died, and she got to Europe, and yeah, she had to fly back. She landed and had to come back immediately, and she died shortly after that. So it was a fairly painful lesson for me in my life, but a formative one in that. And from that something painful, eventually I learned that I need to follow my own dream and find my own dream and execute that dream. And so that's where that came from. Along with a couple of other reasons too. 80% of all Americans don't have passports, and they're afraid to travel, and especially after 9/11. So I thought I'd traveled before, and I really wanted to be able to bring back this human family to the people in America who could use to be exposed to the greater world. I feel at this time after 9/11.
Now, were you an avid bicyclist before you took this trip?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you just said, this is it, I'm going on a bike.
Well, I'm neurotic and I've got ADHD, so the best thing for me to do is to be moving at most times, so bicycle was just a natural thing. I swim, I run, I hike, I kayak, so for me I'm always in movement, but bicycle is kind of like a settling thing. It's like a meditation for me, so it settles me, and you know, along with the photography and the writing, I was able to kind of bring it all together into kind of a new job for myself.
What a fabulous trip. So, well, let me ask you, like how far, it's probably not an average, but how far on a bicycle would you get before some major thing would go wrong, and then you have to go, oh, I got to stop dead and fix this thing on my bike?
Well, I made it the first 1,000 miles, my frame broke, so...
Oh,
yeah,
that would be a major thing.
That's a major thing. Actually, I made it to 395 from San Francisco, and I blew out a tire, and I was stranded right off the bat. So I learned very quickly, right off the bat, that equipment is a major thing. You're no longer riding as a weekend warrior. You're no longer riding just for pleasure. You're not going to bring it to the bike shop. You've got to take care of that vehicle.
And you know how to do all the maintenance yourself and repair things?
You know, it's funny, I change endless amount of flat tires, but when it comes to a derailleur and fixing the gears, I mean, that's the hardest thing I've ever done on a bike, you know. Trying to adjust the gears, I'm not very good at it. But if I wasn't able to do it, I'd find somebody who was, or make it work until I found somebody who did.
What about visas and stuff like that? Did you have to plan the whole trip out in advance and get visas while you were here in the States, or could you do it on the run?
Well, actually, as I wrote in some of my journals, there's no planning for a 3-year journey around the world. There's only the things that you take care of before you leave, and then the things you fail to take care of after you left. And so a lot of it's on the fly. In fact, most of it's on the fly, and you learn how to make it happen on the fly. So visas would happen at borders. If they needed to be prepped out beforehand, like Uzbekistan and such, you'd have to do that beforehand in another country. But it just was a lot of word of mouth and a lot of intuition, that kind of thing.
What about like when you went to Tibet? You know, I practice Tibetan Buddhism, and I remember my Lama in the East Bay was going back to visit his family. He had to disguise himself as somebody else. He had to get a visa months and months in advance. And And he took some Americans with him, and everybody had a whole bunch of issues to deal with getting in. Well, they call it China now, but getting into Tibet, in and out of there. Did you have any problem with that?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, what you have to understand is China's a huge country, and when they let you through the gate at some point in time, they don't always know where you're going to go from that point. So I came in from the west in Kashgar, and then made my way to Tibet from there. So up from the western deserts, up onto 16,000 feet up onto the plateau. And so at that point in time, you go through checkpoints, and I made it through all the checkpoints, and then once we got to a place called Ali, this was in 2006, I believe. Me and a friend had to turn ourselves into the police and say that we were criminals for traveling that far. And then we filled out a confession, and after we did, we had a permit to ride the rest of the way. So kind of interesting.
That's so odd.
But since that uprising of the Tibetans during the Olympics, I've understood now that there are no more cyclists anywhere across Tibet, Western cyclists. They've closed the road. No one does it. So we were some of the last people to do it.
Wow. Speaking of being a Westerner, especially during the Bush administration, Americans weren't looked on it with the kindest light. How were you treated as an American traveling around the world?
It depended on the countries. I went through 33 countries, and I would say I probably got 33 different responses. It depends on who you're talking to and their knowledge level, their education level. In Europe, during that time, Bush was in administration, and I was just extremely bad, extremely bad. Our view as, not me personally as American, people were able to distinguish between the American and the government. And
well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, but they would lambast me. I mean, what is going on? What's happening? Trying to explain to me what's going on with this person. And all I could simply say was, I didn't vote for the man.
Yeah, right.
And I said that over and over again.
Now, do you speak other languages, or did you have to find folks that spoke English?
You know, what most people don't realize is once you get out into the world, toddlers there once they start school, they learn their own languages, and within that first grade, they're learning English. And that's where we're behind the eight ball. Every other country teaches their children English as a second language starting in the first few grades. So that's
so you
important.
can communicate comfortably with just about anybody.
If you can't, you'll get through what you need to get through. I mean, usually tourists are a source of money, so they're going to find a way to communicate with you and figure out what you need. So.
Speaking of the money issue, I noticed in your blog $2,600 cash and passports stolen in Western China. How does a big strapping white guy in China with no money and no passport survive?
Well, I mean, let's back up a little bit. I cycled across America, and then I cycled across Europe for 8 months, and then from Turkey through Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, into China first. So, I went through that amount. So I was kind of seasoned at that point in time. But I'd made the mistake of leaving my money belt out. It was snagged. Someone took it. It was gone. By the good nature of other people, to be honest with you. A gentleman I was traveling with from Germany, his parents actually sent money to him because I didn't have any ID to receive money. Got me a plane ticket to Hong Kong to get a new passport. I came back. I lost $2,600. There were people following me by web and by newspaper, and those people were so interested in seeing me finish my trip that they replaced all that money within a week's time.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So I think once I set my intent on this thing and people realized that I was serious about it, it's weird. Doors start to open for you when you set your intent.
It's so true. Well, it's true in just even day-to-day life, but people don't realize they're creating their own reality for themselves.
Absolutely.
So, did you do a lot of training for this? Did you practice Ironman stuff to make sure you'd be able to, bicycle at 20,000 feet or whatever?
Well, going back again, I'm neurotic about cycling, about staying in movement. So I was pretty well trained, but no one can really train you for saddle sores, and you get a lot of those. But no, I mean, it crushed me. Having to go up into 18,000 feet on a bicycle was, one of the hardest, it was the hardest physical thing I've ever done in my life. And being deprived of a lot of different other things in some of these countries was mentally challenging. And I would be honest with you, there's times when I went completely nuts.
I'm sure. What about food and stuff,
You know, in Tibet, food is good in the rest of the world, but in Tibet, it's almost like you have your choice between some rubbery vegetables, 3 packs of noodles a day is what I was eating, top ramen, and then rotten goat meat. So, you know, my body survived off of, 3 packs of top ramen noodles a day.
And this is the most strenuous part of the trip, probably.
It was, and it was trial by fire. I mean, I lost 15 pounds, and I was already skinny, so it was challenging beyond belief. But also, it built character in a way that I still am kind of unweaving in my mind. So, yeah, the journey took a turning point right after that. I almost gave up, and then I started to have some different experiences at that point in time, and then the whole journey changed its direction and intent.
So that's an interesting point. So you almost gave up, but there you are. You know, so did you have to like meditate your way out of it, or do you sit there and talk to yourself and go, "Look, Rick, we're there. Let's move. You know, let's keep this thing happening."
This is what I said to myself. I said, I would have talked to myself. I had to. I had no one else to talk to. And I'd write. But I said to myself a small trick. I would say, if you want to quit, Rick, you can quit tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. So I would constantly keep saying that to myself. The second thing I would say is that no matter how bad or how good it gets, it's going to change. Like your Buddhist philosophy, it will change. And so the impermanence of it was something I kind of dwelled upon. And in that, it gave me the strength to move through. Like, this will change. As bad as it gets, it's going to get better. Or if it's super great, it's going to get worse. And so it would always change. And once I made peace with that change, I was able to move forward without as much discomfort.
And you didn't travel with a group of people or anything? You were pretty much a solo act for most of it?
I was a solo act for most, but I traveled part and parcel with small groups of people, and then also with individuals I traveled with a Slovenian woman who was the first woman to ride a bicycle from Slovenia, solo, all the way to Beijing via Tibet. So you meet incredible people while you're out there, while you're doing these things. I mean, you realize that you're not the only one, and that these people go through incredible hardships too. And so there's a lot of solace in that. And also you see the suffering of the people themselves, and you think, well, I'm going back to a comfortable bed and what I thought was going to be a strong economy when I came back. But, these people don't get to go back to that comfortable spot.
No, this is their life.
This is their life. And so after Tibet, I started seeing a lot of, in Tibet, oppression by the Chinese government. And then dropping into Nepal, you got the new Maoist government moving in. And then through India and Bangladesh, I saw poverty on a scale that was off the charts.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've heard about India. It's just, I've never been there, but it just sounds devastating.
Well, it's everything. And with 1 billion people, it's not just devastating. It's beautiful, and it's holy, and it's spiritual, and it's depressing, and it's all those things. You can't really put one label on India. I mean, it's magic, but it's also tragic. So these things started to shift the intent of my journey. And by the time I reached Bangladesh, then it shifted into an entirely different journey.
Man. So at the end of the day, so you were riding around in the middle of the night and everything, or were you doing that?
Not as much in the middle of the night. I had to do that in Europe because the days are short, and I was there during the winter. But no, in Tibet we were camped out. I was riding with this woman for quite some time. We would free camp, next to villages, and in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan we were treated very good. We were brought into all those different small nomadic villages and treated very well.
The reason I mentioned the nighttime thing is because once you're done during the day and you've worn yourself to a complete frazzle, there you are at night. Is that your time for writing and kind of reflecting on the day?
It is. Usually my time for writing and reflecting was when I stopped. So I would have a chunk that I would do, and that would be continuous travel for a long period of time. And then I'd stop, put things away, get the camera out, and then really work the camera and collect up the stories, and then kind of summarize what I'd done in the last 2 weeks or whatever, and then send that to the newspaper I worked for.
Did you set a goal of a travel of a certain amount of miles per day or a certain destination each time?
The United States, people don't realize the United States is huge. So that was right off the bat, from San Francisco to New York. I had to ride 70 miles a day up to 113 a day and do that, every day until I got to the Brooklyn Bridge from the Golden Gate Bridge. So that was the hugest chunk. Also covering Tibet, I'm on a timeline because I've got a visa that's got to be, in a certain amount of days. and I've got 1,200 miles to ride on a nasty road. In the outback or in Indonesia, I have to get across Indonesia, all the island chain, in 2 months, across Australia, across the outback, in the time allotted. So yeah, I had to set some goals. There are some places where I was a little more lax and a little more kickback, and so a whole mix of that kind of thing.
It's interesting. It's hard to wrap your head around that concept. But if you think of in a car, we'd get from like here to Willits in what would take you a day.
Right.
And there you are. So no wonder 3 years of riding. And that's why I say it's kind of like magical is a good word for it, but. To me, 3 years is like a short amount of time to do all that riding.
It is indeed, and you see people who have been out. I've got friends, Tim and Cindy Travis at downtheroad.org, who've been out for 8 years, and they don't plan on stopping until they retire. So they are out indefinitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
They just travel everywhere on bicycles?
Yeah, I met quite a few people out there. Another gentleman who's traveling, he's from Iran, and we rode together, and he's traveling indefinitely now, planting trees wherever he goes, and working on environmental projects and working on peace projects as he did with me.
Well, how do you guys sustain yourselves? How does somebody sustain themselves for 8 years riding around on a bicycle? Do they have sponsors? Do they send articles into papers like you? Sell photos? I mean, what?
Well, let me tell you the story of him, and I'll let you take it from there. He had $500 in his pocket. He was working as an engineer. He got his degree. He woke up one day, he was climbing Mount Damavand in Iran, and then he called his mom on the cell phone crying. He said, "This is not my life. This is not what I meant to do." So he got $500 together and left Iran. And this is a devout Muslim man, and he said, Inshallah, if this happens, to the good grace of God. And he's been gone for 5 years, and people have supplied him with money and with equipment and with sponsorship. And, if you set your intent and you truly set it, that's the thing. Some people don't, they're kind of wishy-washy and they don't get what they set their intent on. And I'm not just saying set your intent on I want money or I want equipment. It's that, what do you plan to do? What's the intent of your journey? And his was to, raise awareness about environmental issues and to build friendships, as he did with me.
So you sort of have a built-in marketing scheme there, whether you want to or not. You have this wonderful intention. That's the marketing scheme right there.
Yeah.
I don't mean it in a negative way. I just mean that, holy mackerel, look at what this guy's doing.
Right.
We need to support this.
That's the way it worked for me. I can't speak for other people. That's the way it worked for him. I just think that if you really set your compass straight and you do it for the right reasons, people will jump on board. And you'll go through rough times. I did. At the end, I was on a budget of $5 a day for the last, 3 months. And believe me, that's a rough go.
You think you'll do it again?
I don't know. Probably not that way. I did a lot of projects on my own there, and I'd like to do specific projects dealing with political issues and environmental and world issues, and doing it the same way, writing stories, volunteering, and lending a hand and bringing up these issues, these bigger issues, rather than just riding a bicycle and taking pretty pictures and saying I saw Thailand or I saw Cambodia, but really getting involved with some of the situations there and understanding what's going on.
You're so far beyond a travel log, it's insane.
No, I don't.
So look,
I don't know what I'm going to do.
It's amazing. Well, we got about 10 minutes left, and I know you've got a whole bunch of slides here, and I think pictures really tell the tale. And you can, improve the tale by telling about the pictures. So let's go for some of that.
All right. Well, it's I shot 52,000 and I picked 38, and it does it no justice whatsoever. But we'll give it our best. This is from my beginning at the Golden Gate Bridge in 2005, and then moving quickly there, I rode up to South Lake Tahoe, up and over, down 395, and then across Death Valley in the middle of July at 117 degrees there.
Ouch.
And then across the states into the Bible Belt, across the Rockies into Virginia, and then up to the Brooklyn Bridge. I flew from the Brooklyn Bridge out to Lyon, France, and then cycled into Switzerland with a friend, and then did 8 months in Europe through a lot of countries. It's hard to name them all, but Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Germany. And then eventually circling my way down and making my way into Turkey. So this image here is from Istanbul.
Your photographs are excellent.
Thank you. I mean, this is just a very small crust cut, and if people come to see the show, they see 350 photos, and there's stories that are much more intricate. So this is in Turkey here, and that's Cappadocia, one of my favorite spots on the planet. Geographically unique and culturally unique in that the Hittites in the 11th century carved homes out of these very strange-looking rocks here. I made my way into Uzbekistan, and everybody said, well, you know, all friends and family, these people are going to kill you and gut you, and the Muslims hate us. And I think this photo really kind of shares with you what these people were really like. They weren't toting, you know, AK-47s, and they weren't out to kill me, even though they knew I was American. I traveled from Uzbekistan through the heart of Central Asia into Kyrgyzstan, and I would camp out right next to these nomadic herders with a friend of mine from Germany, Christoph Flatum.
Is that the tent that you used on your trip?
This is the tent I was using, and that's their tent in the background. I like theirs better.
Yeah,
That's a
lot
yurt.
easier to carry yours on a bike.
Absolutely.
Now, did your tent last you your whole trip?
At the very last part when I was in Australia, it made it 2.5 years. It turned into kind of tissue paper, and I was, you know, that ultraviolet light kind of eats away at the tent. So right in the last part, I had to get a new tent, but it made it most of the way.
Wow.
Yeah. So these are all pictures. This is Kyrgyzstan here. And then into western China along the Karakoram. I didn't ride on the Karakoram highway, but very near. And what people don't understand about western China is it's mostly Muslim people. It's the Uyghur people. And, you know, they're contained. They're an autonomous region that was once autonomous. And the Tang dynasty came in and sacked them, and now they're under control of the Han Chinese, you know. And so the people talk about Tibet all day long, but you hear very little about the Uyghur population in the West. From there up into Tibet, this is reaching the Tibetan Plateau here.
What elevation are you at here? Oh, wow.
16,000 feet at an average, up to 18,000 feet.
How long did it take you to? You did this slowly, right? You didn't just try and, you know, zoom
I was
up the hill?
up to 16,000 feet within 5 days, and it crushed me. It absolutely killed me.
I didn't think you could even do that.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
But now we know it's doable.
Yeah, this is a photo after I lost all the weight. This is the crest of the Himalayas before I dropped down into Nepal. You know, drop another 16,000 feet, and I lost a lot of weight, and my altitude was not very good at this point in time. Then into Nepal here, and then into India along the Ganges River in Varanasi here, and this is where the Hindus come to have their bodies burned, or they don't. Some of them show up before they die, but a lot of the bodies are shipped there. And it's an interesting place. They burn bodies 24 hours a day on the banks of the Ganges.
This is a religious...
Well, the Hindus, yeah, they believe that if you are burned, you're cremated there, and your ashes are spread in the Ganges, you go directly to heaven. So there's bodies shipped, all over the world to this exact city so that they are cremated.
And remember not to bathe in the Ganges if I do hit it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I saw everything there. Into Bangladesh after that, where 140 million people in a country the size of Iowa, I began to see overpopulation issues that were beyond my fathoming. So after I'd seen poverty and some of the things there, I began to volunteer 1 week a month. So that was the shift I talked about in my journey. After seeing all this poverty and after seeing all these things, I decided, I can't complain about it. I need to do something. So I began volunteering, and my first volunteer stint was in an AIDS clinic in Thailand, where, AIDS is still rampant.
Yeah.
And so my job was to help feed these people or move them or clean them. And then my second, it wasn't a volunteer stint, but it was a story. I would do stories about people who were making a difference in the world. And this gentleman here is a former UN peacekeeper who's now extracting bombs out of the Laotian countryside. During the Silent War, we dropped 450,000 tons of ordnance, and a third of those are still alive, and they kill hundreds each year, mostly children. And they encapsulate the villages, so the villages, when they grow, they can't move outwards because those bombs are still there. And so they're impoverished due to that war back in the 70s. So people don't understand that the effects of war last long after the war is over. And in Vietnam here, this young boy, the average age in Vietnam is 26 years old. He knows very little about the Vietnam War, but he's out swinging his pick in his field and hits one of those bombs left over from America, and boom, there goes his arms and one of his legs. So I did some work there, and so I began volunteering, and that was one of the important things for me at that point in time, was just not only to witness these things that I thought were tragedies, but to try and help do something about them. So,
Well, thanks for capturing them on photo so that the rest of us can see them as well.
yeah, this little boy was same thing, was blown up by a bomb that had been left in the countryside. Poverty in Cambodia. I did some teaching of school children there. Cambodia is a unique thing in that the Chevron Corporation, located in San Ramon, is developing blocks of oil off the Gulf there in cahoots with the Cambodian government. And what happens is when you put money into the hands of a corrupt government, the price of land in Cambodia goes way up, and the government kicks all the peasants off that land to be sold. So they're just fueling that. So yeah, I dealt with some pretty heavy issues there through Cambodia, and then I rode together with an Iranian gentleman, and then did some work in Borneo and Indonesia. But yeah, I think if you come, you can come and see the show and see more of it. I'll be having a show, I think, during the tour of Nevada, the 50th.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
During Amgen you'll be in?
Not Amgen, but the Nevada City, the tour of Nevada City Classic. So look for the Soul Cycler show, and you'll be able to hear the whole thing if you want to come out then.
Certainly. I'll tell you, if you just get in touch with me in advance, I'll notify people on the show. We'll just periodically mention that you're going to be coming and that's
That'd be
going to
great.
happen.
I'd sure love
That'd
to
be
have
wonderful. Boy, you came away with so much stuff.
It's too much for a half an hour, let me tell you.
And hiding in a cave, you know.
I'm about there right now, let me tell you. But if you come and see the show, you get a whole lot bigger picture of it, and you get a feeling for it, and you can ask questions and really get to the nut of the matter if you really want to. And I encourage that, because this is a great place for it. I love coming down to Nevada City.
It's a wonderful place. So the world, I mean, all that poverty and the overpopulation and everything, you know, you would think that people would have figured that out by now, but they haven't at all. You know, there's like the overpopulation, to me, it contributes a lot to the poverty, and there's corruption and all the other stuff as well.
Right.
It's like hard to figure out where to get started to try and do anything.
I think that where to get started is to look within yourself and figure out what is your way to give. You know, instead of just saying this is all too much for me. I see a lot of people that say, oh, it's all corrupt, I can't do anything about it. To look and find what you're good at. I thought I was good at photography and telling stories. Maybe someone else is good at knitting, or they can make a difference by doing accounting or whatever it may be. Everybody's got a special way to give. It's the choice to give that really makes the difference.
Wow. Hey, thanks, Rick. Thank you so much for
I
coming
sure
on.
appreciate it, Lou. I know that there was some complications getting here, and I sure appreciate you guys going through it after all.
Oh, this is excellent. So you can find out more about Rick and his travels at rickgunphotography.com, spelled like it sounds. Email soulcycler@yahoo.com. You'll be back again for the Tour of Nevada Classic.
Yeah.
Is there any last minute? Oh, what kind of bike were you riding?
I went through 3 bicycles, so yeah, and hundreds of different parts. So it was like if I could put the pile in the room, it would stack up to the ceiling.
Just thinking that would be a great revenue generator. If you could say, hey, I did all this on a trek, you'd be in shape. Thanks again for watching Reality Check. Thanks so much to Rick for coming on. If you or anybody else would be a good guest for me on the show, please email me at loumeyer@nccn.net, and we'll see if we can get you on. I want to thank my skeleton crew for today, Sam, Terry, Scott, and Gail, who made this all happen. Thanks to NCTV for being here and allowing us to use the studios. Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.
Be sure to join us each week here on NCTV for the latest in sports action featuring baseball, volleyball, and swimming. Each week you'll see a great game from Nevada Union, Bear River, or Colfax on your leader in local sports coverage, NCTV. We'll see you there.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The sort of modus operandi behind our